Hello everyone, Vinay here. Welcome back to my channel Learn Coding with Vinay and playlist ASP.NET Core MVC. Now this is part 2 of the mini video series where we are creating an MVC application and also unit test cases. Right. In the previous video, which is part 1, we developed MVC application and there we had implemented CRUD and search functionality. Right. So I'll highly recommend you guys to go ahead and watch that video first and then come to this part 2. Here we will develop the unit test cases for the service layer. Now here specifically I'm mentioning service layer because see there are ways to write unit test cases for your MVC application. So you can actually write test cases for controller also, right? Depending on the way you have coded. Now since we have taken out the data access layer code into the service layer, our controllers remain merely just receiving the request and providing the response. So in that, if you have such application, you can just work on the unit test cases of service layer and avoid the test cases for the controller. But if your controller includes more logic than just the database fetch or maybe calling APIs or something, then you should also write the test cases for controller as well, right? So which we will cover in part 3, unit tests for controllers. And in this video we will work on the unit cases for the service layer. So let's deep dive over here. So let me open the Visual Studio. Now we have already worked upon, we have created the blank solution unit test case and we have added the unit test case.web, which is our MVC project. Now the next thing we want to do is the add the test project. So what we will be doing, just right click on solution, go to add new project. So from here you can search for X unit. I already have this in as a recently used template. So I'll select this X unit test project and say next. So we'll give it a name tests, or maybe actually let's follow this MVC unit test dot tests next. Okay, 9. Right, so the project has been created and we can see it over here, unit test dot tests, right? Okay, and there's a default file created which is called test1. We will not use this, we'll add our own. Now before we move ahead, we'll have to make sure that we have the, just like we did it in MVC, let's make sure that the required packages are there. So we need to install the packages. So let me bring what packages we need to install it over here, right? Let me enlarge a little bit. Yeah, so we need to install these 3 packages: mock, fluent assertion and Microsoft Entity Framework Core in memory. Now why do we need these packages, right? So if we talk about mock, then we will need to mock certain variables, certain services, right? So this package will help us actually create mock or fails object so that we can test a component without depending on its real dependencies, right? Then fluent assertion. Fluent assertion is required so that we can write the validation rules very clearly, right? And I'll explain what these are when we work on the test cases, right? So basically it provides more readable and express way to write assertion and verify test results, right? The next is Microsoft Entity Framework Core in memory. Now, EF Core in memory provides a lightweight in memory database for testing, allowing tests to run quickly and independently without requiring the real SQL Server instance. Now, since we are writing unit test cases over here, we don't need to use SQL Server, right? Because in real project, SQL Server can be located somewhere else, sometime on cloud, sometime on in on premise, and actually when we are doing something on application, something is happening on database side, right? In this scenario, it is not a unit test, it is called integration testing, right? So because two systems are ideally connected over here, one is the front end application and the other one is the back end, which is database, right? So such testing is actually involved in integration testing, not in unit testing. So and to be faster, and more readable and reduce dependency, we will be using in-memory database, right? Entity framework in-memory database. So let's go ahead and install these packages. Let's first start with the mock one. So go to tools, you get package manager for solution. Let's search for mock, and here is the one. So I'll install this one package and show you how this package needs to be installed. Remaining two I'll install in the background to save video length. So select this project MVC test. This time we don't want. Make sure you are selecting the correct project over here. We need to install this mock into the test project, not on the web project. Right, and look for the version. Okay, 4.20.72. Let it be installed. So it seems to be have installed. Uninstall button is enabled, right? So I'll install the remaining two, which is fluent assertion and in-memory database, and come back. Now I am going to install Microsoft Entity Framework.core.in-memory. Now here we have to install the version which is compatible with the version the project is built upon. So .NET Core version. Since we have created the .NET Core in 9, we will have to take this version for Entity Framework Core in memory also, right? So that's why I wanted to show you. Let me install it. I accept. So all the packages are installed. Let me click on the save all button to make sure they are registered in the project file also. Let me close this. Let me also close this, and let's go to our test project and see if the packages are installed or not. So we'll need to go to dependency in that packages. So we have installed it Fluent Assertion, Mock, and Microsoft and .entity framework core in memory. So we are ready on the front from the packages, right? Configuration. Now next thing we wanna work is to add the test case classes. Right. Now before we move ahead on that, right, we need to understand three things about test cases, writing unit test cases. That is arrange, act, and assert. So when we write test cases, usually three-step process. This is actually a three-step process. First, arrange. We need to set up the test data, dependency, and required object. Right. Next, second, act. Execute the method or core functionality that whatever we want to test. Then assert. Then verify the actual result matches the expected outcome or not. Right. So we will have to code for these three parts: arrange, act, and assert. So once we write the test case, you will understand it better. Right. So let's go ahead and add the test cases now. So what we will be doing, we will be adding a new test class over here. So I'll say add, right click, add class. We'll give it a name, product service tests.cs. Say add. Make this public async because we have async methods all. Now before we work on actual test cases, I missed to have one step, that is we need to add the reference of this web project into this test project, right? Because we will be using this product service functionality. Ultimately what we are doing, we are developing test cases for the service layer written in this project, unit test.web. This guy basically, product service. Let me open that. So for this guy we are going to work on unit test cases. So what do we need to do? We'll say right click over here, add. We'll say project reference, and we'll select the web one, say okay. Now you can see it over here in the dependency and project section. See, we have added the project reference over here. So basically this project is dependent on this project, and that's what it says. Now let's go back to our test case class. Let me save all this. Let me close this, and this is good. This is the class we are going to work upon. Hmm. Okay, so we have error over here, but I have made, actually we missed one base practice. So let me do that first. What we are supposed to do, we are supposed, since we are going to develop the test cases for service and controller both, a better way would be, organize them better. So let's have a folder in the test project called services, and here we will add the service test cases. So let's wait, and let me just delete this and recreate this. So I'll delete this, delete, okay, and I'll add it over here in this service folder class. So let me, I hope I have the name. Oh, okay, great. So we have it over here. Now let's start working on the test cases. So first we need to have a test case for, get all method or get all method, get all async. Right. So let me go ahead and add this. And okay. Actually, let me save this. Okay. So what we are going to do, see, it is also suggesting me excellent, but I'm not gonna use it. I'll have the code piece by piece, and then we can go ahead, right? So first method we wanna have a unit test cases for is the get all async method, that returns all product. And remember those three steps. What we are supposed to do, we are supposed to have three sections: arrange, act, and assert, right? So in the arrange section we are supposed to declare necessary variables, right? So what we are supposed to do, I have the code ready actually, so I'll just copy paste and explain. So here we will be using the dummy in memory, our entity framework core in memory database, right? And we will be using mock to mock these data objects, right? So let me go ahead and copy paste one more. So we are creating a dummy application DB context that is actually not going to connect our actual server, but it is going to create an instance over here in the in memory itself, project memory itself, right? Now what we need to do, so kind of this is kind of our database is created kind of. Now we need to put down data for the table, right? So we remember we have a table called product. So what we are supposed to do, we are supposed to have some data into the product table, right? Now we need to, this product we have, where do we have it? We have it in the web project. So let me just control dot, press console dot, and let it suggest. Okay, so we are supposed to have a using for MVC unit test case dot web dot models, right? Right, so error is gone, right? So up to here what we did, we created an in memory database. In that database we added two uh, two values in the product table, right? And we saved it. Now let's create a variable for our service, right? So service we have it into the web project, right? So what we are supposed to do, where service is equal to new product service, and it uses this context, right? So this service, now when we use this service, it is not going to connect to our actual database server. It is going to integrate, it is going to use this in memory data only, right? Okay. Now next move to the act part. Now in the act, what we are supposed to do, we are supposed to call that method, whatever method we want to test, that we are supposed to call. It is giving me suggestion, but let me copy paste it. So where result await service dot get all async, right? And service is what service it is representing, it is representing our product service, right? And we are writing the we are calling it now over here, and we are storing the result into the variable result. Now let's go to the assert section. In the assert section, what we are supposed to do now, since over here we call the service, we have captured the result or output or response of the service in this result. We are supposed to have certain validations check. whether this return data is correct or not, right? So what we are supposed to do, we need to write certain assert statement, right? Here what the fluent assertion package will be used, right? Now what we are supposed to do, what we have written, result dot should not be null. Now since there is data, we already have data, the return of this, basically this result variable should hold some value, right? And then we are calculating the count. Result dot count should be 2, since we have added two values into the product table, basically in memory product array or whatever this is, right? So it should check what number of count we have, it should be 2. If we have written more, if we have added more over here, then we could have written it accordingly, right? So let me summarize this again. What we have given, give the test case name accurate so that they are meaningful, and by looking at it you can just determine whether it is, what is the purpose of the test case. In this case, get all async returns all product, right? So what we are doing, we are testing this method get all async, and what is the purpose, it should return all the product within the database, right? And then the three part, arrange, where we are declaring the necessary variables to call that method. Then act, over here we are calling the actual method, service method. And in the asset, we are evaluating the result of calling the service, and based on the evaluation it will be determined whether a test case is a success or not, right? So I hope this is clear to you. You can pause the video and look at this code. It's quite simple, you know now let's go ahead and run this. So what we are supposed to do, go to test explorer, and over here you will get all the classes where you have declared all the test cases. You can see it, you can run them all together, you can run a particular class, or you can run a single test case also. So let's expand this. So we have this one, we have this test one which is lying, I think, outside this one. We don't want to test that, we want to test this one test case. So I'll just say right click and run. See the test case success rate, we have green dot over here, right? So at this moment we have only one test case, that's why we can see this one only. Now we'll add more test cases. Let's dive further over here. So now I'll have the actually code ready, so I'll copy paste it and I'll explain, because majority of code will remain the same. For example, this, preparing the required objects and calling that functionality, that will remain the same. What will change, the assertion, the way we are evaluating whether a functionality is working correct or not, that will only change, right? So let me go ahead and add the next test case, which will be for this get by id async, right? So let me bring that code. Right. So what we are doing now for the get by ID using method, we are making sure that this test case checks whether it returns the correct ID data or not. Right. So what we are doing, we are arranging again the same thing. We are arranging in memory, DB context. We are putting down some data. Here we are only adding one into the product table or product list. Right. Then we are calling this method get by id async, and we are checking whether id number one product exists or not, right? Now in the assert, we are checking it should not be null. If id 1 exists, it should not be null. Now over here, since we have already added one product with id 1, then this should not be null, right? Product should not be null because it is there, one number is there, right? Then the name should be Pepsi, the category should be cold drink, right? And we can have some other check also, right? The price should be 45. Let's go ahead and run this now. So again, test test explorer, and let me expand this time. Let me just execute this one particular test case. We don't want to execute all. So it has turned green. So our test case was successfully executed, it worked properly, right? Now what we are supposed to do, let's, what happened when the test case fails. So let's say, let me say add one more character over here, right? So If only and only these all are true, then the test case is a success. If any one of these is not true, then the test case is not a success, it's a failure. So what will happen in this case? So let's go ahead and run this test case again. So I have changed the comparison value. It should be cold drinks 1, but it is not, right? We know it is cold drinks only. So ideally this should turn red. Let's see. See, it failed. It turned red. It says that expected result category to be cold drinks 1 with a length of 12, but cold drinks has length of 11, right? So it was going to compare cold drinks with cold drinks 1, and it failed, right? Ideally it should have only cold drinks, so it failed. So let me remove this, save this. Now what if I pass something else over here? Let's say I say 12. Let's say what is happening. So we are going to run this test case against this only. We have the product with id 1, but however we are passing the product id 2 and trying to retrieve the data. Let's see what will happen. Ideally it should fail as well, right? So expected result not to be null. Why? Because here we have declared not to be null. Since it returned null, the test case failed. But ideally if we pass a id that does not exist in database, then it should return null. So returning null is a valid test case actually, right? So what are we are supposed to do? So we should not mix test cases in one test case only. So ideally you should have test cases for individual conditions, right? So what we are supposed to do, let this keep we will keep this as it is. We'll keep this one and we'll add the test case. We'll add the dedicated test for checking null, right? So let me just bring that test case over here, and I'll explain what it is. Again, you can pause the video and check out the code. As I said, majority of code will be remaining the same, only the assertion conditions will be changed. So here also we are doing the same thing. We are declaring db context, creating in memory database. We are adding some value into the product table, we are saving it, then we are declaring the service, and then we are calling the method, whatever method we want to test. Now here what we are doing, we are creating an in memory data with product id 1, and we are trying to retrieve product id with 999, right? So ideally this should return null. Now here we are checking result should be null, right? So if this returns null, if this returns null, then this is a valid scenario, right? If we are passing id that does not exist in the database, it returns us null. So that is a valid scenario. So for that also we should have the test case. So here what we are doing, get by id invalid id that returns null, right? So give your test case such a name that it reflects the purpose of the test case, right? Now let me save this. Let's go to test again, test explorer. Now this time I want to run whatever all test cases have in this class. So I'll say just run. Let's wait. Now see, all has turned green. So all these three test cases were success, right? So let's move to the next test scenario. Now we are done with get all product, get by id. Now the next is add async, right? So let me go to over here. Let me make some space over here, and we will have the test case for adding a product to the database. Again, here we are not adding that into the database, we are just adding it in memory. So the test case name is add async valid product adds product successfully, right? Again, arrange will have the same piece of code, right? Here we are declaring, here we are calling the service, right? In act, in assert we are retrieving the product list, and out of that product list we are checking what is the first product, and what is the name of it, what is the category of it, what is the price of it. If it is ideally this only, then the case is a test case is a successful one, right? So this is the example of adding a product to database. So let's again go ahead, test explorer, and so you can see this. Whenever a new test case is added, it is marked as grade, right? That means it was not run not a single time. If you see, the others are marked in a dark white and marked in green with a tick, that indicates these were the test cases which were run previously and they ran successfully, right? Now let's say we only want to run this particular one test case, so I'll just say right click and run. And it ran successfully. So we had in test run, it ran successfully. So now let me go ahead and do one thing. I don't want this guy, so let me just right click and delete so that it does not disturb us. Right click, delete. Okay, so that we have a clear test cases for service layer only, right? And we can just say right click and clear test results, right? So next time it will start from the beginning. Now the next we want to test is the next method we want to test is the update async, right? So let's go ahead and have the code for update async. Again, you can pause the code, pause the video and check out this code. Arrange section will be same almost all time, right? Then then the service, we are declaring the service. Then we are bringing the variable, we are bringing one product, because ideally while updating, if you talk about the UI, before update we are supposed to bring that one value on the screen, right? One product, and then the user will have option to change it and they'll change it and submit it, right? So this one step is extra over here. We are bringing the product of id is equal to 1, right? And we are now over here, we are changing the values 60, let's say it's a 750 million bottle, this is 1 liter bottle, right? And we are calling the method update async. So when we are done with this actually updating, then when we try to retrieve this and when we try to retrieve the product category and product space, it should return the updated one, not the old one, this one, right? So this is what we have coded over here. Quite easy and quite similar, you know so let's go ahead and run this as well. Now go to test explorer and let me run this time all. Yeah, for this guy let me run all. So it ran successfully. All the test cases were run successfully. We can see count over here 5. We can see over here 5 total test cases. Out of 5, all 5 were success. There were no failed test case. Right. Now let's move to the next functionality, which is delete async. So now we will have the test case for deleting the product. Just give me a moment. Right. So we have the test case for delete async existing product delete successfully. Right. Again, in the errand section, we'll have the similar thing. We'll declare the in-memory database context. We'll put down some value over here in the product. We are saving it. So basically, here we are preparing the database. Consider this like we are preparing the database. Then we are telling that service, okay, we are going to use this service, and that service will ultimately use this as a data. Right. And then in the act, we are calling the method. Right. So here it is delete id with 1, and in assert, now what we are doing, products dot to list, product should be empty. Now why this is, since we have added only one product to the product table and we are deleting that one product, so ideally the product list should be empty, right? So the product should be empty. Now you can have a test case that actually check for whether that can actually we can have more product over here. You can delete one id from it and try to retrieve that id and check for the data, right? You can have that test case also. That depends on how much you want to cover, right? So let me save this. Let's go to test explorer and again right click and run. Let's wait and watch. And all the test case ran successfully. It is working fine. Now next is the search functionality, right? So here we will have multiple test cases. Early, now the whatever functionality we had, except the get by id had two cases. Other were pretty straightforward, so we had only one test case for each, right? Whether it is adding to the database, whether it is updating the value or not, right? Now in this test, in the search functionality, we will have multiple test cases. So let's see that. So I'll have the all test cases in first, and then I'll explain what they are. So let me copy paste the test cases I have already. Okay, so this one is the delete we checked previously. Now from here we will start working on the search. Now what is the first test case? The search using name filter returns matching products. Now remember, we can search product using search text and the price range option, right? So in the first test case, we are only going to provide it the product name. We are not going to provide the uh, price range. So that is one test case, right? What we are doing, again, we are doing the same thing, declaring db contacts in memory. We are adding two values over here, right? And then in the search method, we are searching it based on the product name, only Pepsi. So ideally it should return only one value, right? So in the assert, it should have count one, and the name of that product should be Pepsi, right? This, it should not have count one with this lace chips, right? It should have count one with the Pepsi, right? So this is the one test case. Second test case is category filter. Now we are, instead of the product name, we'll pass the category name. So we have the cold drinks at two locations and snacks at one location. So when we search using passing category in the search text, ideally it should give us the count 2. So in the assert section, we are checking that the count is 2. Now the next is minimum price filter, right? So we are adding only the minimum price, right? We are keeping the search text and maximum price blank, null basically. So what we are supposed to do over here, we have two values. What we are searching, minimum price should be 30. So it should have count 1, and the name of the product should be Pepsi, and because it has the count 45. Here 20 is the uh, price, but which is less than 30. So here the number of product returned by this functionality should be either 30 or greater than 30, right? So in this case it should return this guy, only one record with this, right? So this test case is also covered. And next one, not matching products and returns empty list. So we are passing something that does not result in any product list, right? So in that case it should return the null, and it should be there. It should be, the in the asset section we should check whether the result should be empty, right? So that's what we are doing over here. In the context, in the product, we are only adding one value, one product data, and we are trying to search which is something not there in our database, right? We are trying to search something with name chocolate, but it is not there in the database. So ideally it should be, this result should be null, and we are checking the same thing, that it should be empty. If it is empty, then it is a success. Then then it's a ideally a success test case, right? So let's go ahead and run again all these test cases now. So let's go to test explorer, and now we have these four test cases for search which we have never run. And let's go ahead and run again this. So all the test case has ran successfully. We ran total 10 test cases, all of 10 are success, right? So this is going good. So basically we have tested all our service functionality listed in product service, right? A similar way, when you work on a project, you can have test cases for your service layer. Again, sometime you might have function which can have only one test case, right? Sometime you have a function which can have 10 test cases, right? So basically, in if you talk a usual scenario or an ideal situation, right, every if else is your test case in your unit test example, right? So if there is a if, you should have a test case for if there is a else, you should have a test case for else. If there is a else if, then all those four you should have test cases. So this is a very common thing I learned in my career, that okay, if you are writing something, if there is an if else, then there should be test case for each if else, right? I hope you got this point. So that's it guys in this video. So we have completed our unit testing for service layer in this video. In the next video we will work on developing tests, unit tests for the controller, right? So thanks for watching this video guys. See you in the next video. Thanks a lot.